CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
The driver of a tractor-trailer unit found himself on some railway tracks in Nanaimo this morning after his big rig careened over an embankment. Happened just before 8 o'clock this morning after the truck had left the Nanaimo Assembly Wharf near the Port Authority. The big rig went off the road through the railing on the Esplanade, dropping 15 meters onto active rail lines below. It's fortunate there was nobody below or no oncoming trains at the time. When fire crews arrived, they were told by the driver that he didn't remember anything after leaving the yard.
He was still in the cab when we arrived, and we were able to communicate with him. He didn't remember much, but as I said, fortunately no one else was down working on the rail lines.
No word tonight on the extent of the driver's injuries, not considered life-threatening. Emergency crews suspect a medical condition is to blame for the accident. The rail line was closed for the morning, so crews could safely get the semi off the tracks. A 40-year-old Victoria woman's in the hospital with serious injuries tonight after she was hit by a car in the 900 block of Douglas Street. Struck just after 9 o'clock this morning. Witnesses say an SUV failed to stop at a marked crosswalk and plowed right into her. Police believe the driver may have been distracted by a group of children who were near the roadway at the time. The driver was ticketed for failing to yield to a pedestrian in a marked crosswalk and was fined $167. Saanich police had their hands full this morning chasing an armed robber who held up the TD Bank at the corner of Quadra Street and Mackenzie Avenue. Police say a masked man walked up to the teller about 10:30, pointed a gun and demanded cash. He then fled on foot, northbound on Quadra, hopping fences and running through yards. Police swarmed the area with the K-9 unit and with armed officers, scouring the scene for evidence. They found some in the parking lot of the apartment right beside the branch.
It's believed at this time that a dye pack exploded when he was running through the parking lot as well, and that dye pack would have been either orange or red in color, so it's very possible that he may have dye on his hands and lower arms. So we would ask that anybody that witnesses anyone with a dye or what is believed to be dye on their hands to contact us immediately.
The robber got away with an undetermined amount of cash, which may be covered in dye as well. Witnesses say the robber's a white man, 35 to 40 years old, about 5'9 to 5'11 in height. He was wearing a black hoodie, a red toque, blue jeans and runners. If you know who did it or have any information, you're asked to contact Saanich Police. And seeing double is something these doppelgangers from California were counting on while they hid out in plain sight in Esquimalt. Their plan was to try to trick police into thinking one was the other and then get it wrong. They have similar tattoos, the same ethnic background, and they sport the same haircut. But the pair of wanted men couldn't pull the wool over Vic PD's eyes. Officers figured out the ploy, solving an international manhunt for Dustin Ilar and Daniel Mota. Both have robbery and firearms convictions and parole issues in their home state of California. Well, this has been a day of tributes across the country for a true Canadian original, Stompin Tom Connors, being remembered tonight for his prodigious and silly songwriting and his fierce patriotism. As we first showed you last night, the iconic musician has died of natural causes at the age of 77.
Oh, hockey game is the best game you can make.
That's the song many of you know best. The hockey song is one of 260 uniquely Canadian songs that Stompin Tom wrote in his career. They were inspired by his youth, hitchhiking across the country, performing for food. The Prime Minister tweeted, "We have lost a true Canadian original. Rest in peace, Stompin Tom. You played the best game there was to play." Gordon Lightfoot, another icon, says Connors was a success because he could relate.
He's a real, true Canadian. He's really, he's patriotic. And his experience in growing up here is so vast, you know, through his childhood and everything. He understands the country. He's the soul of the country.
Stompin Tom left a message on his website before he died saying, quote, "I must now pass the torch to all of you to help keep the maple leaf flying high and be the patriot that Canada needs now and in the future." He certainly was that. Our Adam Swatsky will have more on Stompin Tom and remembrances of his life and his work later in our look at arts and lifestyle. The federal government is opening the door to more competition in Canada's wireless industry, and that could mean cheaper cell phone bills for you. The Harper government says it wants to have at least 4 wireless service providers in every region of Canada. Right now, at least 94% of the cell phone market in this country is controlled by 3 companies, TELUS, Rogers, and Bell, which owns CTV. The industry minister says the move will increase competition and that will lower prices for you.
Well, we're paying too much, I think.
Yeah. More competition, lower prices, pay all for it. Be great, yeah.
There's systemic mistreatment of Canadian cell phone users in this country. The decision that they made still enables the big three cell phone companies to gobble up most of the key digital infrastructure that cell phone companies need to deliver service to Canadians.
Companies that want to get into Canada's wireless market have to file their applications by June. An auction for wireless bandwidth will take place in November. All of the cardinals are now present and accounted for at the Vatican as we inch closer to finding out when the conclave will elect a new pope and when that gets underway. The final cardinal to join the group arrived from Vietnam today. In the meantime, the preparations for the conclave continue at the Sistine Chapel. The attraction has now been closed to visitors. Canada's correctional investigator says the prison system in this country is failing in the way it deals with Aboriginal people. The report says the gap in prison rates between First Nations and non-Aboriginal people is widening. 1 in 4 inmates in a federal penitentiary is of Aboriginal descent. The report says Aboriginal-specific provisions in the justice system are chronically underfunded. Irving Shipbuilding of Halifax has won a $288 million contract for design of the new Arctic offshore patrol ships, part of the Harper government's shipbuilding procurement project. Construction is expected to start in 2015 and will support up to 200 jobs in Atlantic Canada. Well, eating sausages, ham and bacon, the cured meats, could be the perfect recipe for an early death, according to British researchers. They say that diet of processed meat is linked to cardiovascular disease, cancer, and about 1 in 30 deaths. They say the chemicals and the salt used to preserve the meat is likely the factor. Food vendors around the capital region were invited to sample the latest eats and were given the challenge to do it without leaving a trace today. Today saw the 4th Victoria Regional Marketplace show put on by Gordon Food Services, which is shifting the focus from food to waste. It's challenging trade show suppliers and vendors to take a zero-waste approach when offering samples at their events. The event showcased many display booths with examples on how to package and display food with a decidedly greener approach.
It's really about education, getting people to understand that there are other avenues to the samples that they have at their stations, but also people for takeout at restaurants and that they can put it in biodegradable packaging or reusable packaging.
You know, it is easy to do. It's easy to take a plastic spoon out of the pitcher and add a wooden toothpick, take out a foam plate and add a baking cup or something, a renewable resource. And so pretty much everything that they use to sample at our shows is compostable friendly.
There were about 60 vendors at today's event at the Laurel Point Inn showing off ways to reduce waste. Ellis Recycle says there'll only be about 2% garbage by the end of today's event. The rest will be in the compost or recycling bin. Well, if you're out for a walk near Ogden Point in Victoria today, you might have done a double take at this giant tower on the water. It's called the Joy D's Resolution, and it's a research vessel used by scientists to drill samples out of the ocean floor. The vessel is operated by an American nonprofit organization that represents global researchers, unloading some gear at Ogden Point before it heads to southern Alaska for an expedition set to begin in May. The latest long-awaited fashion retailer to open its doors in Greater Victoria has set up shop today. Joe Fresh is now in business at Uptown. And a long line of eager shoppers couldn't wait to get fresh. They were out in the rain waiting for the doors to open. The first 100 people through the door would receive a $50 Joe Fresh gift card, and everything in the store is 20% off all day. People were beginning to line up just after 6 this morning.
For the first time in my life, I'm number 1. 4 hours, yes. I didn't realize that's like, oh my God, I said, look at this. It's worth it though. Yeah. I love Joe Fresh.
Very reasonable prices is the best thing, and they're very well made.
Why come so early?
Well, it's only the first 100 people are getting the $50 gift cards.
Yeah.
Joe Fresh joins 2 other new fashion retailers at Uptown, H&M and Forever 21. 3 women from Nanaimo were killed in one of the horrific crashes in the Malahat in October of last year. 2 people survived, a 6-year-old girl whose mother was one of the victims and a young man who was a family friend. His mother says she's relieved that the safety upgrades are finally coming.
It's not only for our own safety, right, for everyone.
I don't want that to happen to anyone else anymore. Yeah, it's pretty tough losing someone else that you love, and your cousins and friends. Yeah, it's pretty tough.
At the time of the crash, the Malahat fire chief said speed was not a factor, but said more improvements to safety needed to be made.